Okay, so I'm just going to really quickly show you how to make fire. I'll preface this with the caveat that I'm not awesome at this. I've just kind of figured out something that works, and this is what I used on the castigator that I made for G'day Bloke. So the way you start is you get some green stuff, and I'm just going to do a demonstration on a random model that I have lying around. I have my headless one-armed journeyman warcaster here. What you do to start is you take a teardrop shaped piece of putty, so tear a little piece off, and then turn it into a ball, and then squeeze one end so that it's teardrop shaped. And this is probably way too big a piece to put on this tiny model, but it's just a demonstration. This is about the size of what I would have put on the castigator. So I'm just going to move the microphone away from my mouth. Okay, so then you take your teardrop shape. So that's what it looked like in the end. Oop, sorry, it's kind of hard to get this to go. And you stick it on the model wherever you want it to go. The bottom, the point goes up, because that's where the bottom is where the base of the fire is going to be, and then the top is where the point of the fire is going to be. So you stick it on, and then you use your fingers to make sure the bottom sticks. You have to make sure the bottom sticks, which is why I don't recommend using wet tools until you've already got the base stuck down. So keep that in, and then if you do have a wet tool, make sure to not go underneath the edges of the teardrop. Just kind of push it on anywhere you need to, because it's very important that this not come off. We're going to be pulling on it afterward, so it has to be stuck down pretty well. Ordinarily, after you do this, I would generally leave it for a minute or two to make sure that if there is any liquid under there, give it a second to evaporate out. So I've just got a piece of putty on her back. So then I take a pair of tweezers. Again, I find for these it's easier to use a pair of tweezers. I don't know if it's visible. They have a sloping end, as opposed to ones with a level end like these. The level end's a little harder to use. I find it's a little easier to do with the ones with the slope. And then, quite simply, fire is just a whole bunch of these little teardrops, and then you're gonna grip it, and we're here and we're making ridges. So you squeeze it, and then you go a little higher and you change the angle, and then you squeeze it again, and then you change the angle again, and you just keep making a wobbling ridge as you move upward. This one doesn't look so great because I haven't done this in a couple of weeks, but anyway, and then as you go to the bottom, when you want to join it to other ones, the bottoms, everything swoops. There's no hard edges in this. Sorry, no hard lines in the ridges. That are all swoopy. So another, see, I don't have enough water on my tweezers, so always keep re-dipping. And then so you can do other things, like once you've in the base. The reason we put so much in the bottom is because we're actually going to pull pieces out of it. So you can see I actually made a mistake here and I made a ridge, but that actually, it makes a nice shape. So I'm going to take the tweezers and I'm going to basically cut into it, and I'm going to pull another ridge out of the bottom. So now there's a second point in this piece. And again, the camera's focus here is not really helping very much, but you can kind of see it. But there's a second point there. And just keep doing this. So you make a second point. Going back to the main point up here, it's still a little bit too normal, so I'm going to make another ridge that continues down onto the side, and always keep the ridges fluttering back and forth. There shouldn't be any, it shouldn't just go straight up to the top. It should always wind left and right. And this is basically all you do. You just keep doing this, and you keep pulling pieces out of it. Create new points at the bottom of the teardrop, because otherwise you end up with things like this where it really does just look like a teardrop. So you need to really add a lot of noise to it. So I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other side, where I cut into it to create another spike. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So dipping to make sure I don't stick too much to it. cut. And don't really worry about screwing up the peaks you've set on the other places. The squishing and the stuff and the way they move, it just helps put it into a... If you plan the way all the shapes are going to go, it's going to look artificial. Whereas if everything kind of starts falling apart and getting squished in unplanned directions, that's when it really starts to look like fire. So we can go back to the other ridges that we've already created. Back to the first one. Trying to make sure those are still zigging and zagging. So there's fire here. And then, so there's a fair amount of fire on her at this point. Focus isn't so good there.